Hi, I'm Dr. Cristin Zaimes, and I'm a physical therapist, and I own Oceanside Physical Therapy in the seacoast of New Hampshire. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the nervous system. I'm a little bit of a brain geek, and that's because I see so many women, especially, that have been treated poorly in this medical system, and so they unfortunately have to deal with their symptoms for a long time. And when you deal with something for a long time, the brain goes into a different state. And so I've done a lot of research around the brain and pain especially. And so that's what Erin asked me to talk to you a little bit about today. So the first question, Erin asked me a couple questions, so I'm just going to kind of go over them. The first question is, what does the nervous system have to do with stress, pain, and health? And how are they all intertwined? So the easiest way to explain that is to think of the stress response and the very sort of primal response of a tiger chasing you. If your system is threatened, what our bodies do is go into absolute high alert, and what that means is the brain makes the decision that we are in a threatened state, and so all of our resources are going to be allocated the best way possible. So all the sort of blood flow and priorities are away from things like digestion, and they go into muscle control for speed. So adrenaline is a big piece of that. So speed and just heightened sensitivity. So it's like this little burst of superpower where you smell things more than you would have, you sense, you hear, you can go faster. It's this little burst, because it's meant for you to get to safety. Unfortunately, the way our culture is and the way a lot of people are operating now is that we stay in that state almost all the time. So our heart rates are elevated, our blood pressure's up, the blood flow is away from the gut, so digestion is not a priority. The chemical processes and the organs and the systems in our body are not ideal to maintain that state. So a lot of negative things happen on a chemical basis when that's your persistent state. And one thing that actually happens is the pain response is much quicker, or you can look at it also like if your brain is, which is kind of the supercomputer that puts all this together. Like, are you in a threatened state right now? And that could be for so many different reasons. That could be a relationship that you're in, a job that's stressful, physical inflammation, or other underlying causes. But your brain is not really discerning that. You're not really able to pick up on all that. But your brain is saying there's threat. So the outputs for threat are going to be anxiety, depression, pain, inflammation. So your brain is going to say, hey, I'm going to alert your consciousness, really. I'm gonna put out these signals so that you pay attention that we're under threat, things need to change. But we ignore those a lot of times. We're told to ignore them. We're told to suck it up cupcake as women. And so it's just this hamster wheel that we just keep going on. So unfortunately, when we stay in that state, yes, it's a stressful state, and that stress trigger can be a mental, emotional, physical trigger. But what the body's system does when that tiger continues to chase us, and that tiger obviously, like I've said, comes in many forms, is that the brain continues to give your the response of I'm threatened, and that comes across in a lot of different ways. So that they're all intertwined because every system is prioritized for that stress response, and we're not meant to maintain that at all. We're supposed to go back to baseline where our heart rates come back down and digestion improves. And I'm super simplifying it, but we're supposed to go back and be the animals just chewing grass, like, hey, no, there's no tiger gonna get me. I'm cool. So and we don't do that. We as humans, that's supposed to look like eating calmly, slowly, taking walks, without a million things on our mind. But there's so much sensory information coming at us all the time that it's actually a persistent state of stress, even though it's just so many signals coming at us all the time. So that has effects on our organs, on our systems, on our brain. And what you have to look at is if any of these things are happening in your body, really just attend to your brain and say, your brain knows more than our consciousness knows. So the brain is saying something's not right in this system, and so we're going to alert. And so that comes in many forms. But if you have depression, if you have anxiety, panic attacks, if you have pain that hasn't gone away, if there's digestive issues, what we see a lot is that we're in this persistent state of stress. And so it's a very hard place to heal. And that's where Erin and I have come together to work with some of this brain work, really, this neuroscience, because it is very fundamental in the healing process. Question 3. How do we move from a place of hypervigilance to cultivating a sense of resiliency in our bodies? So hypervigilance is a very interesting state, and I do see many patients come to me in this state. And, unfortunately, I think it's not really validated from a lot of practitioners, and people just sort of pass it off on like, oh yeah, you're kind of a little bit crazy and a little bit nuts about this. The reason you're in a hypervigilant state, basically that hyper-aware state, what's that? What did I eat? Oh, maybe I can track it to this. It's because no one has helped. And so when you're the only one advocating for yourself and you're staying in that heightened place of awareness because you're trying to figure yourself out, it probably served you a purpose at one time. I can think of several cases just right off the top of my head. Somebody with cancer that went to several providers and said, something's wrong. And then they said, no. And then finally, when they found something wrong, and it was this years of recovery from chemo and radiation and still recovering, you're staying in that state. There's a reason for it. Your kind of normal level of detection apparently wasn't good enough. So you've developed these hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant, strategies so that it doesn't happen again. However, down the road, that short-term strategy, again, just like we talked about in the first video, that stress state, those are good responses. Those are necessary responses, but they're meant to be short-term. So if they're not short-term, the problem becomes when that state is a long-term state that you're in. And that's when it becomes a problem. So we work a lot with coaching out of that hypervigilant state. And what you have to do is find safety. So everything is perceived as danger and what if when you're in that state. And so you have to have help, really, and guidance finding that safe state. So let's I think food elimination, and I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with this, but if you have a food sensitivity, it's like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes. And some of the strategies that providers give you, it's like, okay, well, eliminate everything and then add one thing back at a time. And sometimes it's not the one food, or it's not, we do this a lot with things that irritate your bladder. Some are easier than others to figure out, but sometimes it's not. And there are so many other variables that go into it because we are complex that you can't really narrow it down always. So that's where that hypervigilant state is. And I have people coming in and they record everything they eat, drink, poop, pee, like everything. And that's stressful. So we try to get away from that, being aware of what are the best strategies for health, but then also working away from that state. It's not easy, but I think when I've seen people come out of that state, it's really freeing. So we work a lot coming out of that state, and it can be something that is really not effective down the road, but unfortunately it was pretty effective short term. So it's a hard state to come out of. Okay, last question. How do we come out of this? How do we find resiliency, and how do we down-regulate our nervous system? I think the mindset shift when you understand a little bit more that the brain is resilient and that these are sort of states that you're in that you can change, I think that is the biggest shift in order to move forward. You have to have a mindset shift that you step back and you say, this mindset is no longer serving me, whether it's a stressful state of just an environment that you're in, or a hypervigilant state because you have had to protect yourself. When you make that awareness and you say, okay, I've now made the decision, this isn't healthy anymore, we need to change. I think, and there's a lot of whys to that, because the reasons can be complicated why you're staying in that. And they can extend to childhood relationships and current partner relationships and spiritual goals. And by that I mean just sort of like, what's your purpose in life? That it can get deep really quick. So I think that the more you're able to look within and be willing to change that mindset, I think that's the first step in finding a resilient mindset. But there are more specific things you can do to downregulate your nervous system. So I think the absolute fundamental one is breath work. So you have got to learn to listen to your body and breathe again. And it could be as easy as putting a hand on your chest, hand on your belly, and taking a slow breath in. Feel the rise, slow breath out, feel the fall. Do that 5 to 10 times. You can't stay stressed out really when you are attending to just that one aspect. So I would say there's a lot of physical tension that I see people for. So we're actually doing a lot of that breath work for the pelvic floor, specifically to downtrain, meaning relax the pelvic floor. And there's a lot that also happens with your heart rate and your blood pressure and just slowing everything down. So I think breath work, and then breath work with whether it's movement. The other thing is I think you have to do things that you like to do. If you don't like to work out at a gym and it's stressful, you're not going to feel relaxed and resilient in a gym. It can be wherever you feel like you. So for me, that's walks in the woods. I just love being in the woods and that solitude. I probably overthink too much, but sometimes I can actually just listen to the wind or peaceful music or just walk or just, even just thinking about other things than all of the, everything on my to-do list. That can be really restorative for me. But it's a huge piece of it. So who are you? What do you like to do? Are you a yoga person? Are you a Pilates person? Do you like classes? Do you like to be alone? It matters because that's your experience and that's your brain. So you have to also set some boundaries and start to say, this is me and this is what I like to do. I always have a conversation with people. I never push people towards the gym. If you came to me and said, I love the gym, I just want to get back to it, great. If you're like, I hate the gym, I'm not going to give you exercises, or we're not going to try to work this into a gym atmosphere. Pretty sure that won't work. So what do you like to do? Find the joy. You have to learn to laugh again and find your purpose, and your nervous system will start to feel not threatened. And that really goes into safety. How do you feel safe? What do you do? The safety messages, the messages of not danger, have to be more than the danger messages. So if the second you wake up, you have stressful encounters, and look, kids are going to be stressful. They're not danger messages necessarily, but they're going to elevate our systems. But that's one piece. Then there should be other parts of your day that downregulate. So there has to be pieces of your day. Eating, you have to eat slowly, eat mindful. That can be very hard. But we have to get back to safety and finding that slowness in even just parts of our day. It doesn't have to be all of it. You don't have to be, Buddha from morning to night, but you have to be able to slow down for parts of your day, and you'll get better at it. It's really hard sometimes. So just start small. And I would say that's the last thing is whatever goals you set very, very small goals, like successful, tolerable goals. So if your goal in the next week is to work out 5 times a week and you're at 0, that's probably not going to work. And when you're not successful at it, your brain actually has a mechanism to demotivate you from trying that again. So you're working against yourself. So baby steps. Even if it's literally like, I'm going to watch a bird, I'm going to look at my dog, look at the leaves, just like one thing, you have to set yourself up for success, because once you're successful, you're going to be more motivated to find another successful thing and another successful thing. So joy, success, small baby steps, breath, and I have a couple other ones, but they're a little bit more specific, and there are ways to find out how your nervous system is elevated and what works for you. And so just keep exploring. Find your recipe that works for you. Thanks so much for watching that video. Please hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more of those videos and keep learning on how to read your body. Have a great day.